I find buttonholes on the Husqvarna Viking Brilliance 75Q much simpler than most people think. Now, we've actually had some fun with buttonholes on our Husqvarna Viking Stitching Cosmos online course. Here, I'm just going to show you real quick. You can do buttonholes in variegated thread. You can use buttonholes to be creative and weave ribbon through them, or use them for where you would normally have drawstrings coming through, like drawstring pants or drawstring bags. There's a great way to create an opening that's secure for anything that's got a hook through or tie backs, or even like if you want to make a shower curtain that was made out of fabric, put buttonholes at the top. Okay, so let's break down where we find buttonholes, which foot do we use when and where. You actually have 2 buttonhole feet that came with this machine, and all the different ways that you can create them and some tips along the way. Okay, let's get started. One of the things that you're going to realize is that your buttonholes are in this first A utility stitch menu. So you can arrow over to them, and they start around number 30. Number 30 is going to tell us to look for foot C with the red wheel. So we're going to show you about plugging this in shortly, but do keep in mind you have another buttonhole foot that comes with the machine. It normally sits right here, and the reason I know that is because, number one, this is a little longer than most of the other feet. It has this little extra nub at the end, and there's a part right here in this slot that's got a deeper cutout, so that little nub will sit down in it and this will close. So if you've ever had, couldn't figure out why this wasn't fitting anywhere, or maybe you just have it tucked in the back, that's where it actually sits. So that is the manual buttonhole foot. So allowing you to do buttonholes that would be whatever length you want, where this one will have some limitations. With the automatic buttonhole foot though, let's go ahead and start with this one first. Before I put it on, I want to show you on this side that there is a red wheel, and when I spin it, there's a white line. The white line and the little mark of the white crown needs to be lined up. Now, once I line this up, if I get it all lined up, and then I put my fabric in, it will usually twist that wheel and make it unaligned. And then you go to sew, you'll get a message that references that these two are not lined up to begin. By having it set at where it needs to, it can do the whole thing start to finish. You could even use the start-stop button, meaning you can just start it and then, well, walk away. No, you should probably stay close, but you can just let it go and it stops at the end of the buttonhole, which is super nice. So once we get it all set up, that is the benefit of having everything ready to go. Let's also pull out a button, because on this machine, you can use this little measuring guide right here at the bottom. And if you notice, right where it has the metric where 0 is, there's a dotted circle. That will assist you in measuring the button you want to make a buttonhole for by putting it at the 0 mark and then looking. This one says it's 12 millimeters. So keep that number in mind when we actually go to set the machine to the length we want it to go. All right, I usually attach the foot first and then go to plugging it in. So just go ahead and do like you normally do. And then you're going to find your plug is back underneath here. If you look underneath, there's a place, kind of like plugging in a set of headphones. There's a headphone jack kind of right up in here. So look so you know where to go. And then when you go find it and you get it lined up, which once you do it a couple of times, you can do it without looking, is I need you to push it enough so it clicks. And once it clicks, meaning you have to push it up high enough so it registers. Some people put it in just partial and don't get it all the way. You can even hear this machine's like jumping around once it sees that it's attached. You can hear it. All right, once it's attached, you're good to go. But if it's not, what happens is that you will be sewing, and the first time it sews the buttonhole, it just keeps on going. I call it a runaway buttonhole. So if you ever find that it just never does a buttonhole, it just sews straight, and actually it'll sew in reverse, is that you just need to unplug it, replug it. I have had to sometimes turn the machine off and turn it back on just to get everything happy again, but then it's ready to go. So just keep that in mind. You'll also be able to, if you wanted to use your sewing advisor, you can tell the machine what kind of fabric you're doing or using. So if it's a little heavier woven and then you choose buttonhole number 7 down here, it will pick the right buttonhole, set up everything for length or well, not length, because you get to do that with your button, but for density, for settings. And it actually, did you notice the foot changed away from what we had? It's actually recommending the manual buttonhole foot. It wants you to do that one instead. So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and pick regular buttonhole. Let's talk about measuring. So I measured to the 12 millimeter mark. And if you look on screen right now, kind of a default number sometimes comes up is actually 14. So change that to the length you need it to be. Now I am seeing in between 11 and 13. So I'm going to err on the 13. It's 1 millimeter, but I find like sometimes not all that, yeah, they kind of jump sometimes for not having every single number. I know it sounds weird, but it's okay, really. If you look at the screen, you notice it's going to start at the lower edge of the buttonhole, and so this way first. So if you're just doing a quick practice, number one, I am going to put stabilizer behind my fabric. If you're doing anything you need to stabilize, it also gives the feed dog something to kind of grip onto. Sometimes when I've just done kind of this squishier fabric, I don't always get the most perfect buttonhole, so I am going to put stabilizer behind there. So think of it as a decorative stitch. We've talked about decorative stitches. We know that stabilizer is key for them to turn out correctly. Okay, the next thing is, because we know it's going to start at the bottom of the buttonhole, if you put it in right here, you're going to go off the edge. Okay, so I'm going to come in here somewhere low and then have it go right on up. I know a lot of people ask, like, well, how do you know where to start them? Well, your pattern will always tell you where to put the first stitch of the buttonhole. And then you just make sure that it's aligned to go away from you and you're all set to go. Okay, now that I've put this in and I've probably touched this foot, I'm peeking in on this side. I know you can't see it, but I'm looking for that white crown. There it is, now lined up with that white mark. When you're ready, just go ahead and start to sew. You can even do kind of a hands-off here. You see it stitches away from us, but we knew that because that's what the machine told us on screen. And I'm just going to keep my foot on the foot control until the entire buttonhole stitches. It does the tack at the top. The reason for the two different directions is actually so both the satin stitches lay and stitch the same way, so they look identical. Did you see those locking stitches right at the end? And my foot was still on the foot control. Let's touch the scissor button. We'll cut it and we'll take a look at our finished result. Awesome. So that is exactly the size we need for that button, plus a little bit for the tacks at the top and bottom, and yes, that will open up just right. So if you wanted to do that again, you just put it in where it needs to start and repeat all the way around. If you want to try some of the other styles of buttonholes, there is keyhole buttonholes. These are great for working with buttons that have a shank, and other styles. We have a stretch buttonhole. We've got other ways they end, and just stitch them all out. You'll find which one actually works best for you. Now, if you are using the manual buttonhole, let's go ahead and do that one real quick. I'm going to switch over. What we'll have is a way to do the actual length. Now, even if I just unplug, it actually will revert to knowing that I have to set the length. And while we're right here, let's just take a look. So see the little reverse button? We've at times seen this show up at various things, like when we were doing the mending stitch and a few other places. That is what we're going to push. Once we get the length of button length of buttonhole we want to actually be at, and then it can go ahead and finish it up all the way around. So let's do one of them with the manual buttonhole foot. You can start by making two marks, like a beginning and an end, and then as I lower the presser foot down, I can see when I'm right on that mark. And as I sew, what's going to happen is that it's going to travel up. I will need to stop it when I reach that additional mark that I made on my fabric. There it is. Then I'm going to touch the reverse button. Then it's going to know to turn around and do all the steps. When I come back even to where I first started, touch it again, and then it will continue. It knows it's at the end, so it'll do just the right amount of stitches, lock it, and then I can go ahead and cut it. And then I can do that again. So I have control over the length, just as easy with a manual buttonhole. But can you see that I could have had marks that are way longer than what the built-in maximum length is for the automatic foot? So if you need bigger ones than this will allow you to do, you have the other regular C foot for doing any length of buttonholes. So I hope you'll give them a try. Try out stitching all the different kinds so you can see the different looks, and then just know that with a little practice, it's not that hard. Just let the machine do the work, and all you really need to know is where to start your first stitch. I hope you've enjoyed our videos so far. Make sure you're always clicking the like button and subscribe so you can see all the future videos that we do in helping you master your beautiful machines.